40% of Americans don't trust mainstream media. Why is that? How did we get here?
Listen, we are seeing a huge loss in trust of all of our institutions. It's the media, it's medicine, it's banking. It's a huge problem because when you think about democracy and all of these pillars, they need to stand tall, they need to stand strong. And sort of losing that trust is not by accident, it's by design. If you remember when President Trump was running the first time, Steve Bannon once said, the goal is to blow the whole thing up. And so I think that you've got mistakes made or things starting to slip while at the same time there's a concerted effort to destroy the media. Because the media, the news media is, in my opinion, the last line of defense of holding power accountable, right? And you had a bit of a perfect storm, right? President Trump won, and tons of people were shocked or angry or frustrated, and they're tuning out. And at the same time, you have the Elon Musk media machine because they want you to leave traditional media and they want you to go to X, which is a bastion of misinformation where there is no fact checking. So it's a perfect storm of people saying, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm tuning out, I'm disconnecting. And then you have a force pushing it. But even in the last 2 weeks, what we need to do is just cover what's happening in America, right? We have to cover Democrats trying to figure out what their lane is and how they're going to get back on their feet. And we have to simply cover what this White House is doing. And I think if we do that, right, there's that saying, you know, trust is gained in raindrops and it's lost in buckets. And it's not yes, you're not incorrect that the media has lost trust.
This is where I would push back. And in a lot of ways, I'm as lefty as they come. But when I see this kind of insight and passion being directed at the current administration and the lack of this kind of insight and passion being directed at the previous administration, where, again, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about left-leaning news media organizations were kind of like, la, 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 everything's fine. Look, the economy's great, la, 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 immigration's not that much of a problem. And really being Cleopatra, queen of denial. Thank you. Boom.
I would push back on immigration. I can specifically remember when Greg Abbott of Texas and Ron DeSantis of Florida sent those buses of migrants to different cities, different parts of the country, which ended up being politically genius for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
The media regularly talked about the fact that Biden was not doing enough in his first 2.5 years on immigration. Even though in the last year and a half, you're seeing the numbers go down, he just wasn't doing enough. And you saw it in how people voted, right? You had places like the Bronx, you had places like New Jersey, people who said, I'm not happy with immigration in this country. And that's why Democrats are scrambling to recalibrate now. But I do think that was covered. And I interviewed Vice President Harris in September. And I remember asking her, I said, nobody's eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. Mm-hmm. However, there are lots of people who live there who aren't happy with the amount of immigrants who have moved there legally or not, because now their hospitals are stretched and their schools are stretched. And that's the same thing in tons of communities in the country. You know, what do you say to that? And I remember her answer was, well, we had this immigration bill and Donald Trump blocked it. And she's right. So there's nothing to put, she's right, Donald Trump did block the bill, but that doesn't address how people in the country feel. And just getting mired in, well, we tried to pass this thing and it didn't happen. Mm-hmm. What Republicans have been successful at, and they have not solved any of these issues for the American people, but they're willing to say some of the they're willing to talk about some of the unpleasant things that people feel. That when people say those things out loud, they're immediately called, xenophobic or racist. Yeah. And we have to make space for how people feel. Do you know what I'm saying?
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
My mom and dad live in New Jersey.
Most people, a large majority of people who have a problem with the current immigration crisis and have for the last 5 or 10 years are not racist, but often kind of tarred as racist by the liberal left.
I will tell you, if you go on the internet, people there's loads of clips that will come after me.
I heard about this internet thing. What is it?
After the election, I had not a debate, but a conversation with a friend of mine who was on the show, and I was making the point that I do not think Donald Trump's win means that half the country's racist. I don't believe that.
Mm.
This person really, really came at me that that's easy for me to say as a white woman of privilege that the country's not racist. But I think that's a very quick way to alienate people, right? Like I grew up in New Jersey, and I can tell you that when lots of people in New Jersey now drive over the bridge and it costs, I can't remember because I have Easy Pass, I think $16. And when they hear stories that migrants who live here get a cell phone or they get to live in they get to stay in a hotel, that infuriates people because we are living in this moment where, not a moment, in general, everybody wants to feel like life is fair. And right now, lots of different groups of people feel like it's good for this group, it's good for that group, but it's unfair to me. And I think with the immigration crisis, we as a country or political leaders didn't give enough space to people who say, they're not necessarily anti-immigrant, but they're saying, I'm American. I was born here. I went to school here. I work here. I pay taxes. I cannot make ends meet, because you're seeing the middle class get squeezed and squeezed. And they're pointing to other groups that are getting support from the government. And the people they're pointing to are migrants. And we need to give space to sort of hear those people, hear what their needs are. And instead, a lot of those people have felt like when they voice their opinions, they're treated like they're xenophobic and they're racist and they're anti-immigrant. And I don't think they are.
A lot of people have come on this show and talked about the toxic relationship to social media, the dangers it screens, the mental health connection to screens and to news and to doom scrolling, because we all know that what gets clicks, what gets people turning back in after the commercial, next up after the commercial, are your carpets killing you? I know that's more of a local news thing, right? And I get it. But so many people have come on the show, I can't even tell you, half our guests, and said, I don't watch the news anymore, and my life is so much better. I turn it off. I took Apple News off my phone. I don't even subscribe. I don't go on social media, and I don't read news articles, and I'm raising bees and growing poppies and, washing my dishes and meditating, and my life is so much better and richer for it. So I know you've got a strong answer to that.
Well, I think you said the most important thing. Richer. That's a very rich thing to say, because people of privilege can afford to tune out. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think that, just this weekend, I was at NBA All-Star, and I participated in a conversation where someone said, listen, the two-party system doesn't work. That's fair. I buy that. Let's have Elon Musk go in there. Let's shake it up and let's see how things work out. In theory, I totally hear that. But
who's going to be hurt?
That's exactly
Who's going to suffer?
That's exactly
when the social safety net is dismantled. Who's going to suffer?
Or how about this?
Tech
right?
bros and Wall Street traders? No.
And
actors in their fancy burned down houses. No.
If you were to say to me, Stephanie, having a Department of Education sit in the federal government doesn't work because education has different needs in different parts of the country, I would actually buy that argument. If they said, let's make it local, I would buy that. But they're not saying that. They're not saying, here's what the Department of Education does on a federal level.
Yeah.
We're going to take it out of Washington, and we're going to take this money
to the states,
and we're going to take it to the states. Mm-hmm. If they said that to me, I'd say, I hear you. Great. Let's see how that. Mm-hmm. But instead, it's a bastion of fraud, waste, and I can't think
corruption.
of the third, corruption. Let's just get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
What if I was a parent of a special needs student? Mm-hmm. What if I was what if, right? We already know that our teachers, who are among the most valuable members of society, right? My children's teachers spend more time with my kids than I do. Mm-hmm. And year after year, we hear about more teachers that have to go to a GoFundMe so they can get school supplies for their classroom. And so the issue is, if you want to make cuts, if you want to make changes, let's do it. But let's be open with the American people. And my point is, for everyone who's like, I just want to tune out of news, be careful what you wish for. Because people just voted to blow up the system. And I know the system's imperfect and you're not happy with it. But do you want it totally blown up? Because and I'm not saying it's where we're headed, but it could be. And I'm not asking people to activate, and I'm not asking them to be a Stephanie Ruhle fan, but I'm just saying, I'm begging you right now. I don't care where you're getting it from. Know the source of your news, be informed, and be engaged. Because right now, we are living in such a moment of misinformation
The Soul Boom Podcast. Subscribe now on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you get your stupid podcasts.